The desert evening bled red and gold across the horizon, the sun sinking like a dying ember behind the mesas. Rancher Elias Kane tugged his horse toward the north fence line, where the wind had carried a faint sound, a cry that didn't belong to any coyote. When he found her, she was sprawled in the dust, wrists bound raw with rope, her face streaked with grit and blood. Her lips cracked open as he bent low, cutting the knots with his hunting knife. She didn't flinch at the sting. Instead, her voice rasped steady, almost defiant. "I'm not afraid to bleed." Elias paused. Words like that didn't belong to the broken. They belonged to the stubborn, the ones who chose fight over surrender. He draped his coat across her shoulders, the weight heavy, warm. For a moment, her eyes, dark, fierce, met his, and he felt the land hold its breath. Hoofbeats. Up on the ridge, riders appeared, black silhouettes against the dying sun. Dust curled around their horses' legs as they scanned the valley below. Elias cursed under his breath. Whoever left her for dead hadn't ridden far. The woman's grip tightened on his sleeve. "If they find me, they'll finish what they started." "Then we don't let them," Elias said. He lifted her onto his horse, her body light but trembling, and swung up behind her. The sky cracked with the cry of a hawk as he spurred the horse into motion. The land around them blurred, mesquite thickets, dry washes, jagged rocks. Behind, a shout carried, high, sharp, angry. The riders had spotted them. Elias urged his mount faster, every jolt jarring the woman's frame. She pressed closer, hiding beneath his coat, her breath hot against his chest. A canyon mouth yawned ahead, shadows pooling deep. Elias guided them into it, weaving through stone corridors, praying the desert would conceal their tracks. But hoofbeats echoed behind, growing louder, hungrier. He tasted dust and dread. Friend or foe? Salvation, or a crueler fate? Elias's horse thundered through the canyon until the sound of pursuit splintered, fading into the stone. He reined in near a dry creek bed, listening. Only the rasp of the wind. Only the horse's labored breath. The woman slid down first, unsteady but stubborn. She pressed a hand to her side, where blood seeped dark through her dress. Elias caught her before she collapsed. "You'll tear yourself apart," he muttered, guiding her toward the ranch house that sat low against the plain, a weathered silhouette against the stars. Inside, the air smelled of hay and saddle leather. He eased her onto a blanket in the loft above the barn. She winced but shook him off when he tried to fetch water. "I've lived through worse," she said. "What's your name?" Elias asked. "Mara." Her gaze burned steady, even as her fingers trembled. "And I'm not here by chance," she told him then, halting at first, then with fire. How she had pulled the trigger on Colter, the cattle baron who ruled these lands with an iron grip. She hadn't killed him, but the shot had saved another woman from his violence. Colter's men had bound her, left her for the vultures, and ridden off laughing. Elias felt the weight of her words like a stone in his chest. To shelter her meant branding himself as an enemy of Colter. Out here, that was near a death sentence. Yet as she spoke, something else stirred. The spark of a woman who refused to bow, whose courage was carved from hardship. He found himself watching the line of her jaw, the steel in her voice, and wondering when he had last met someone who carried their pain like armor. Outside, a lone coyote howled. Mara's eyes flicked toward the sound, then back to him. "They won't stop hunting me," she whispered. Elias tightened his fists. "Then they'll have to hunt us both." Somewhere beyond the hills, lanterns flickered in the dark. Colter's riders were already closing the circle. Dawn split the plains with a pale gold glow. Elias stood at the edge of his corral, shotgun resting across his arms, eyes scanning the horizon. He had made his choice. Mara stayed, no matter the cost. And in the Wild West, every choice came with a price. She appeared beside him, pale but upright, his coat draped over her shoulders. "You should have left me," she said. "Now Colter will come for you too." Elias gave a half smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Colter's been stealing land from men like me for years. Maybe this was bound to happen." The day passed in tense silence, broken only by small tasks. Elias patched the barn door where bullets might soon find their mark. Mara helped mend a torn bridle strap, her hands shaking from blood loss, but steady with determination. When the wind whipped dust into their eyes, she laughed softly, and Elias caught himself staring at the strength hidden inside her weariness. By evening, a rider came down the trail with a warning. Colter's posse had been seen north of the river, 30 men strong, driving hard. The noose was tightening. Elias fortified the ranch as best he could, shutters barred, lanterns doused, rifle rounds stacked on the table. The night hummed with crickets, but beneath it, a deeper sound, like thunder rolling far away. Hoofs, many of them. Inside, Mara sat by the window, fingers tracing the scar on her wrist where rope had bitten deep. "You don't owe me this," she whispered. Elias crouched before her, meeting her gaze. "Maybe not, but I'll be damned if I let Colter decide who lives and who dies on this land." The floorboards shook faintly, a reminder of what was coming. The desert wind sighed through the cracks, carrying with it the taste of storm. The first lightning forked across the horizon, white and merciless. And then came the gunfire. The storm broke like judgment itself. Lightning clawed across the sky, splitting the night into shards of white. Thunder roared so close it rattled the rafters. And beneath it all came the sharper sound, rifle cracks splitting the dark. Bullets chewed into the corral fence. Horses screamed and bolted. Elias shoved Mara toward the inner barn, pressing a rifle into her hands. "Stay low," he ordered. But Mara shook her head, hair plastered to her face by rain. "I won't hide." Lantern light glowed on the ridge where Colter's riders poured down like a swarm, their shouts riding the wind. Fire streaked from their guns, sparking off the barn's walls. One bullet tore through a hay bale, spraying dust and straw. Elias fired back, steady, each shot a prayer to hold the line. Then came betrayal. From the tree line emerged figures Elias knew. Neighbors, men who'd once shared whiskey and fence wire with him. But now they rode with Colter, lured by promises of land and silver. Elias's chest clenched. "Damn them," he hissed. The barn door groaned, splinters flying as fists and boots battered it. Mara pushed past him, rifle raised. Her eyes blazed with the same fire he'd heard in her voice that first night. "They want me alive," she said. "That's their weakness." Lightning lit her silhouette as she stepped into the storm. The rain slicked her dress to her skin, the rifle gleaming in her hands. The men saw her and faltered. She raised her weapon and fired, the sound swallowed by thunder. One rider toppled. The rest reeled, shouts of anger mixing with fear. Elias moved to cover her, heart hammering. Together they fought, side by side, rain and fire mingling, the night alive with chaos. But the storm wasn't finished, and neither was Colter. The storm dragged them into dawn, the world washed raw by rain and smoke. Elias and Mara rode hard, leaving the ranch smoldering behind them. They followed the river's bend, the earth soft and treacherous under their horses' hooves. At the crossing, Colter waited. His black stallion pawed at the mud, his broad frame framed by men who had survived the night's fire. His hat-shadowed eyes sharp as steel. "You should have bled out where we left you," he growled at Mara. Elias swung from the saddle, shotgun steady. "This ends here." The river hissed in the silence that followed. Mara dismounted too, her rifle hanging at her side. She stepped forward, water lapping her boots, and her voice cut like glass. "You talk of endings, Colter, but I know your sins. Every man you stole land from. Every woman you tried to break." The posse shifted uneasily. Doubt flickered. Colter spat, but his grip tightened on his revolver. He raised it, just as Elias fired. The blast echoed, throwing Colter from his saddle, the revolver spinning into the mud. But Elias hadn't aimed to kill. The shot ripped through Colter's arm, sparing his life, yet stripping his power. His men saw him bleed, saw him stagger, saw the truth of his fear. And in that moment, loyalty dissolved like smoke. One by one, they rode away, leaving their baron kneeling in the river's edge, clutching his wound. Mara stared at him, jaw tight. Mercy or vengeance, her choice. She lowered her rifle. "Let the desert finish what it began," she said. Elias laid his coat, still blood-stained from the night she'd whispered her defiance, over her shoulders once more. They stood together in the pale light, the river winding on like the future itself. Out here in the Wild West, survival was never promised. But vows made in blood and storm carried further than any rider's threat. If Mara's courage stirred something inside you, don't just leave this story behind. Like this tale, subscribe, and ring the bell, because in the West, love may be scarcer than water, but it always finds a way.